Blah, 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 blah. Welcome back to the Hacking Autism Podcast. The podcast all about making autism your unfair advantage. So today's episode is all about the last season. We have covered a variety of topics. We've talked about monsters, not to be mistaken for demons. And we've talked about high school and what does that look like. We've talked about parenting, jobs, and being an entrepreneur. Some of my favorite episodes would be flipping the script, Learning to Love Your Monsters, part 1 and 2. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely consider it. Something that was probably most surprising was special needs care across cultures in China with my friend Rebecca Wilder. And if you haven't taken a listen, I would highly recommend it as you're enjoying your summer fully. So I want to take a little bit of a pause over these precious few summer months in Minnesota, where I'm located. I would encourage you to check out some of the older episodes earlier in the season. Maybe you came and you heard about this podcast midway through. All the content is relatively evergreen. I actually don't think there's anything that's really time specific. Click on what interests you. And then I just wanted to pivot briefly to what spoke to me the most. My biggest lesson in interviewing all of these people about marriage on the spectrum or work or parenting is that we're all doing our very best to figure it out, and we should give ourselves way more grace. That's not specific to the autism community, but as I have more and more of these conversations with people that are just kind of crushing life, they tend to be really tough on themselves, or the people that can sustain that success, they tend to learn to develop grace for themselves and for those that are in their lives. That's it. It's a really brief episode today, but I would really encourage you to check out any of the episodes from the earlier portion of the season, because there are gems to be extracted out of every episode, regardless of its topic, because it gives you just a little glimpse, a little peek behind the curtain in life on the autism life on the autism spectrum. That's harder to say than it should be, but I'm going to give myself grace because that's what I just talked about. What surprised me the most about diving deep into the autism community, but that's something I was never really exposed to in growing up with autism and growing up on the spectrum, is how many similarities exist across young adults that maybe they don't ever talk about their autism. They just try to live life the best they can. And maybe they knew a parent that where everything was about autism. And so there can be this extreme dichotomy, but at the end of the day, we're all just trying to do our best. So that would be my encouragement for you, that you make the most of this summer, these beautiful months, regardless of your location, and give yourself some grace. Give yourself grace to the people in your life. And I will catch you in a few weeks. We'll call it like 4 to 6 weeks, and I'll have lots of new conversations with other experts on autism or those that are living life on the spectrum. A bit of a personal note, I have a company, Spectrum QA. We perform testing services with people with high functioning autism as a competitive advantage. And the business is blooming, it's blossoming, and it's consuming my day-to-day, and that's a great thing to be consumed with because my values align with my actions. So I can't complain about that at all. But it does require me to kind of pause this podcast, deprioritize it just for a little bit, just for a few weeks, as things settle down in the business of Spectrum QA. And I just can't wait to bring you more conversations. It's hard to track down all these amazing people. And if you, humbly or not so humbly, think that you're an amazing person, please, please, please connect with me. I would love to share your story on this platform and get the word out there that people are crushing life with autism. It doesn't mean it's not hard, because all life is hard, regardless of a diagnosis or not, or being an NT or being an ASPE. It really doesn't matter. I mean, life is challenging. So if you have a story, I would love it I love to use this platform to share it. And so if that sounds interesting to you, please, please, please DM me for more info, and I would love to connect with you on an upcoming episode of the podcast. Have a great summer. And then one last thing, I just want to say thank you for listening. It's been an honor to meet you in the space between your ears, to share stories of encouragement and of hardship of life on the spectrum. I consider it a privilege to put this podcast out, and I thank you, global audience. The list of countries that this podcast is heard in is astounding. So thank you. I couldn't be doing this without you. I'll catch you guys next time, and don't forget to keep hacking.